Winning Blueprint presents.
Draft Zone.
Welcome to the Draft Zone. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. This is the 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. And what we aim to do with this program is take a look at every single team in the National Football League's 2013 NFL Draft. Break their draft down, give each and every single pick made by X said team. Today we'll be talking about the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens and their 2013 NFL Draft. We want to look at every one of the 10 selections made by the Super Bowl defending champions. Give them a grade using our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the draft wrap-up series, as we can never tell if these players are going to pan out or not in the National Football League. And you can't tell if a team reached for a player or not. The Ravens could see a player as being a first-round selection. Another team could see that same exact player being a third-round selection. So you can't tell if a team reached for a player or not, and thus there are no strikeouts here in the draft wrap-up series. So we'll look at the Baltimore Ravens selections in this draft, give them a grade for each pick, and it's not just the player that we're grading out here. It's the pick overall. We're looking at the pick, how it was made, when it was made. Of course, we're looking at the player as well, but also how that player could impact the Ravens roster in 2013 and possibly moving forward. So a lot of things we take into consideration when breaking these picks down and giving them grades. We'll get a grade for every single pick in the draft, get an aggregate score for the Ravens draft as a whole, and then we'll move on from there. Got the draft board behind me. As we all know, handy dandy pointer no longer in the picture. Next man up. Got the magic wand with me. Let's get to the Baltimore Ravens draft board and break down their 2013 NFL draft. This is a huge draft for the Baltimore Ravens coming off of that Super Bowl victory. We know how the season went for the Ravens after they won the Super Bowl in 2000. They didn't have a great draft that next year. They didn't have a great season, and they never really got back to that plateau again. This is a huge draft. Lost a lot of guys in free agency. Hey, look, I was one of the people that thought, man, the Ravens sold their soul to the devil for a Super Bowl championship. And look, I don't have a problem with that. You get the Super Bowl title when you can get the Super Bowl title. However, I thought they sold their soul to the devil and that they were going to be in some trouble come 2013. Now, you see a couple of guys they were able to get in free agency. A guy like Michael Huff. You get Elvis Dumervil. All of a sudden, it doesn't look that bad in Baltimore anymore. Add to that the draft. All of a sudden, in Ozzie Newsome, the Ravens trust. Looks like he's at it once again. Never count the Baltimore Ravens out when Ozzie Newsome is their general manager. You look at their needs. Linebacker, safety, wide receiver, offensive line. We know Ed Reed gone from the safety position. We know, and you not only lost Ed Reed, you lost Bernard Pollard as well, who I thought was a great glue guy on your football team. So that's a huge void there at the safety position. You do get Huff, so that kind of deadens that blow a little bit, softens that impact. But you look at linebacker, we know all the changes made for the Ravens at the linebacker position. No more L.A.B, no more Ray Lewis, no more Paul Kruger. So linebacker, a huge need. You get a guy like Elvis Dumervil in free agency, so that also helps you fill that void in a little bit, but you still got some question marks and some voids to fill there. Wide receiver, Bolden, gone. Huge contributor to your 2012 run to the Super Bowl. You got to have someone step up in that number one slot. Don't know if that guy's on the roster right now. I love Torrey Smith. He's not a number one receiver in this league, so I think you're going to have to find a way to address that. And I don't know if you're going to be able to do that because you didn't spend a top flight pick on a receiver, so we'll see how you address that in the upcoming season. Offensive line, always a need on most teams in the National Football League. You need depth. You need to make sure that your offensive line is where you need it to be, especially a team like this that wants to run the football. You got to protect that $100 million man back there in Joe Flacco. And so got to make sure the offensive line has enough depth to cover any gaping holes if an injury were to occur. You look at round, pick, players, position, school, first round, 32nd pick. The best pick in the first round every year is pick 32. Safety out of Florida, Matt Elam. Look, if you're the Ravens, this one happened just the way you envisioned. Every single safety that you probably had on your radar, with the exception of, and of course, Kenny Vaccaro probably wasn't even on your board because you knew he was not going to be available at 32. But maybe you had the safety out of LSU, Eric Reed, on your board. Maybe. But you knew you were pushing it if he were on your board. But you had the pick of the litter after that. If you were a Cyprian guy, if you were an Elam guy, any safety that you wanted after those two were on the board. And so if you were the Ravens and you were looking specifically at safety, you were probably sitting there grinning from ear to ear because whoever you wanted was sitting right there, and Matt Elam happened to be your guy, and you get him in the first round at the back half of the first round at 32, and I think it's a wonderful selection. Matt Elam is a guy that might have been the heart and soul of that Florida defense, especially in the secondary. Here's a guy that was an All-American. He was all over the field, 4 interceptions, forced fumbles, got to the quarterback. He's a guy that's more comfortable around the line of scrimmage. But look, don't mistake that for a guy that can't play pass defense, because this guy can drop down into the slot, cover the slot receiver. He can go back, play a deep half. And so Matt Elam is a guy that he could be a force for you anywhere on the football field. Doesn't have to be in the box, but that's where he excels. He's a guy that wants to get in the backfield, bring down ball carriers, can play guys out of the backfield. And so he's very versatile, whether in the box as a help run defender or back in the back half of the defense playing some pass defense. He's a really good defender. A lot of people have kind of brushed him aside a little bit because of that height. 5'10", isn't the most ideal size for a safety. But as we've seen in this league, height doesn't matter. We saw Bob Sanders help the Colts win a Super Bowl. When healthy, one of the most dangerous safeties in the league. We saw what a guy like Louis Delmas can do for the Detroit Lions. When he's healthy, that Lions defense totally different than what it is when he's injured. So guys that have a smaller stature don't matter when they're healthy. If Matt Elam can stay healthy, which we've seen these smaller safeties not be able to do in the National Football League, if he can hold up at 5'10", and I think he will be able to, this guy brings a lot to the table. He's a heavy hitter. This guy brings a ton when he comes to lay the lumber on someone. And I tell you what, for that 5'10" frame, you're getting a lot in that little package because he can hit. He's a 4.5 40 guy, so he can run a little bit, and he makes plays on the football. Again, I just told you 4 interceptions in his senior year means he's getting his hands on the football. So he's a guy that not only can bring it in the run game and lay the lumber to receivers, fullbacks, running backs. It doesn't matter. He's an equal opportunity offender. He'll hit anybody. As long as they have the football, he doesn't mind sticking his nose in there and laying the lumber to someone. So it doesn't matter. Tight end, he could care less. He's coming full speed ahead to really knock the snot out of someone. And look, he's a guy that he'll come up and get you down by any means necessary. And sometimes, as we all know, those guys who love to lay the lumber, those guys who are heavy hitters, don't have the best form sometimes. So that's one thing he's going to have to make sure he works on, because at the college level, sure, you come up, give a guy a shoulder. When you're running 20 yards off the ball, you come and give a guy a shoulder. Yeah, they're going down. In the National Football League, you get a guy like Megatron out there. You get a guy like Andre Johnson running around, and you come up with a shoulder, and you don't wrap up. Some of these guys are like pinballs. They'll just bounce off of you and keep on running. Same with some of these running backs in the league too. So he's going to have to make an adjustment in the National Football League at being a little bit more sound of a tackler. But hey, Matt Elam brings everything to the table. He can play pass defense. He can play up in the run. He's a 4.5 40 guy. Forget about the height. This guy brings everything to the table. All the intangibles you look for. He's a leader on and off the field. Love Matt Elam. I think the Baltimore Ravens have done a great job with this first pick of filling in a void. You lose a legend, why not draft a future one in Matt Elam? Sounds good to me. Sounds like good logic. So in the first round, 32nd overall selection, safety out of Florida, Matt Elam is a home run. You can put it on the Ravens. It's a home run in the first round with Matt Elam, the safety out of Florida, coming to Baltimore to man up that safety position. And Lord knows the Ravens desperately could use some help in that secondary. Both starters from a season ago gone. 2 new guys back there now. Matt Elam going to really be the focal point of that secondary next season. You look at the second round, 56th overall, from the Seattle Seahawks, linebacker out of Kansas State, Arthur Brown. Here's a very intriguing prospect. A lot of people were really high on this guy. Some people even had this guy pegged to go in the first round. But a couple of injuries to finish up his senior season. You add to that the height. A lot of people are turned away by a 6-foot linebacker. Arthur Brown dips to the second round. Wasn't able to work at the combine, was injured. And so he fell to a team like the Baltimore Ravens. And doesn't this sound almost too good to be true? And it just sounds so much like, too short to play. People didn't think he was going to be good enough coming out of Miami in 1996. Doesn't this sound familiar? Yeah, not making comparisons to Ray Lewis, but I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Here's another guy. Too short to play. Has all the intangibles you look for at the linebacker position. He's a 4'6", 40 guy. Can run around. Is as solid a tackler in this draft as there is. Once he gets his hands on a ball carrier, they're going down. And he's a guy that'll get you down any way possible. Look, he gets a guy coming at him full speed ahead that's 240 pounds. Once he anchors down and comes with his helmet, puts his shoulder down, that's where that play stops. If it's 3rd and 3 and he meets a guy in the hole for a 2-yard gain, that running back isn't falling forward for the first down. Arthur Brown is very solid when he comes up to make a tackle. So you're getting a guy that's very instinctive, that is very strong at the point of attack, is a high-volume tackler. He's a machine when it comes to tackling. And he's very quick and fast and athletic. Now, again, the height isn't ideal. Forget about that. If you can play football, I don't worry about anything but how are you on the football field. There are some times when your measurables do come into play. But if you're a football player, you'll find ways around that. If you're a really good football player, you'll make people forget about the measurables. So Arthur Brown is one of those guys that once he gets on the football field, you forget about the 6 feet because he makes plays. He's around the football. He's making tackles. He's doing his job. Now, what you'll find with Arthur Brown, though, is not necessarily the most physical guy when taking on blockers, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because of how physical he is when tackling ball carriers. But when he's supposed to be in the C gap and there's a big guard pulling, he's not always in the C gap, which is a little bit disheartening because, again, he's such an aggressive and physical tackler that you expect him to not shy away from contact sometimes, but yet he does. But other than that, I think that Arthur Brown possesses the quickness to cover running backs out of the backfield, can even cover them going up the field on wheel routes. And this is something that you hear me say all the time. Hey, this guy has great short area quickness and can cover spaces in short spells. I say that all the time about linebackers. Hey, if you got him covering a guy in the flats, fine. If you got him covering a guy that's running a quick route that's 10 yards and in, he's excellent in that. But you don't want him covering a guy that's running a wheel route. I say that all the time. That's not the case with Arthur Brown. You can stick him on a guy running a wheel route and feel comfortable that he'll be able to keep up with him stride for stride. Now, will he look for the football? Maybe, maybe not. But he'll be there, and that's a lot better than what you can say for most linebackers. So there's a lot to Arthur Brown, a lot to like there if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan. And I tell you what, that's a really good value pick for where you get this guy in this draft for what he can bring to your football team. That's a really good selection for the Baltimore Ravens. In the second round, 56th overall selection, linebacker out of K-State, Arthur Brown for me is a triple. He brings a lot of value, a lot of good, solid qualities you look for in a linebacker. Let's see if the Ravens get everything they're looking for out of Arthur Brown. A really good selection in the second round. You look at the needs board, and right away, Ravens tackle safety in the first round with Matt Elam. They also get a linebacker prospect in Arthur Brown. So right away, two needs met early on in this draft by the Baltimore Ravens. So now we go on to the third round, 94th overall selection, defensive tackle out of Missouri Southern State, Brandon Williams. The Baltimore Ravens last year, uncharacteristically, were very lousy against the run last season. And you're not used to seeing that from a Baltimore Ravens defense. This defense, until the postseason, wasn't very good. Simply put, I'm being nice. We saw teams run all over them. The Cowboys did it with a flurry of backs. DeMarco Murray didn't even play in the second half, yet the Cowboys amassed well over 200 yards rushing. Jamal Charles and the Kansas City Chiefs went over 200 yards rushing on this Baltimore Ravens defense last year. They were really anemic against the run, and they really didn't generate the kind of pass rush that you're used to from the Ravens either. Now, Terrell Suggs not playing for the majority of the season had a lot to do with that, but still, this Ravens defense wasn't where it needed to be, and a lot of that had to do with the defensive line. So you look at Brandon Williams, a defensive tackle out of Missouri Southern State, and here's a guy that you look at him, I'll tell you what, he's got my attention. All right, at 6'1", 335, small school. Okay, so we know that. Missouri Southern State isn't on anybody's radar. But you know my motto. You know how I feel about this. And it doesn't change. I don't care where you play football at. Division 1, 2, 3, I don't care. All I ask is that you dominate the competition. So you feel like I deserve to be at a better school. I deserve to be playing at the next level, at the National Football League level. Dominate the competition. Are you better than those around you? Dominate. Brandon Williams did that. Okay? 3-time All-American in his division. So that tells you a lot. And it doesn't matter. Division 1, 2, or 3. You don't see guys going All-American in their divisions 3 times in one college career. So that's saying a lot. And I don't care if you're in 1, 2, or 3. So Brandon Williams lit it up. And here's a guy that at the defensive tackle position can get you 8.5 sacks, 9 sacks. These are numbers that he posted routinely. 8.5, 9, 8.5 again. In sacks, 17 tackles for loss. This guy's all over the football field. Very athletic for his size. 6'1" means he's a little short, but he uses that to his advantage, using that for leverage, getting up under the pads of offensive linemen, driving them back into the backfield. Also, possesses quickness to get off the football, rip, use a great swim move to get into the backfield, knife into the backfield to make plays. And so here's a guy from the defensive tackle position that not only can stop the run, shows great lateral quickness by finding his way down the line, doesn't have any problems riding it out, getting all the way down the line and finding the football. So he's a guy that can flow with the play, down the line, get to the football in the run game, but also can knife in the backfield and beat his man and get to the quarterback. That's a luxury that many teams in the National Football League don't afford themselves at the defensive tackle position. Here's a guy that can give you some of that. Now, is he a guy that you want on the field for 50 snaps? No. He's a rotational depth guy, but a really, really good one. A very, very intriguing prospect here in Brandon Williams. I like him a lot. He's going to have to prove, because of the Ravens' style of play, that he can take on double teams, that he can shed blockers. Once that first move doesn't work, he goes immediately to the rip inside and it doesn't work. He's got to find a way to get off of that initial move, come back with a counter, and get to the play. That's something he's going to have to work on, because where he played at Missouri Southern, that first move worked a lot of times. And he didn't have to fall back to that backup move. He didn't have to have plan B or C. Plan A worked 90% of the time. Well, in the National Football League, as we know, offensive linemen are a lot better. Plan A won't work a lot of times. You're going to have plan B and plan C right there on the spot. Brandon Williams is going to have to work on that, but I tell you what, there's a lot to like about this guy. Adding him to a defensive line that already has guys like Arthur Jones on it, Haloti Ngata, this is going to be a great addition to that defensive line. Brandon Williams, defensive tackle out of Missouri Southern State, in the third round, for me, is another triple by the Baltimore Ravens. I really like what they're doing in this draft to this point. We go into the fourth round where the Ravens have two of them. 129th overall selection, defensive end out of Ohio State, John Simon. This pick for me, I'm not that much in love with this pick. I don't think they got a bad football player. John Simon, solid guy, very strong, a guy that's a workout warrior. At 6'1", on the outside, that's not the height you're looking for. He was a defensive end / linebacker at Ohio State. Probably going to have to kick outside to linebacker because at the NFL level, you can't put your hand in the dirt at 6'1". You just can't do it, especially in a 3-4 defense. Maybe in a 4-3 defense. We've seen Dwight Freeney and Elvis Dumervil do it all the time and be very successful at putting their hand in the dirt, being under 6 feet. So that's not an issue. But they possess something that he doesn't. Dwight Freeney, explosive. Elvis Dumervil, explosive, off the ball. That first step can beat a guy before they blink. Before they even get out of their stance, they're already beaten. And then when you overcompensate for that, they come with a different move. With Freeney, it's the spin. We all know the spin. With Elvis Dumervil, hard outside, back inside, you're beat. Because you're leaning on the outside, trying to make sure you get out there. You overcompensate for the speed, get beat inside. Well, with John Simon, he possesses none of that. He's not explosive, doesn't own a quick first step, isn't going to knock your socks off with any assortment of moves or any dynamic move that's going to put offensive tackles in a tough bind or a tough position. He's just a guy that's average. But he owns a motor that is relentless and won't quit. And so that's always a good quality to have as a defensive end / outside linebacker. But at this level, to me, he's a tweener. At 6'1", 257, I'm not sure where he fits in the pantheon of defensive linemen / outside linebackers. At 6'1", the height isn't quite what you want it to be a defensive end. But at 257 pounds, he's not explosive enough to get pressure on the quarterback from the outside linebacker position. Now, we did see a guy like Kruger who was out there, who was sort of a tweener, but we're talking about a guy that was 6'5", 6'4", 6'6", that had an explosive first step in Kruger. This guy doesn't own that, and he's not 6'6". So the hustle, the high motor, the intangibles, being strong, doing everything well and not great, might serve John Simon well in this league. We'll see. I'm not sure. I'm not sold. I've got a lot of questions. For me, in the fourth round, 129th pick, John Simon, defensive end out of Ohio State, is a double. A lot of questions. Need some answers. We'll see how the Ravens choose to use this guy on the football field, on the defense. At least you know you're going to get some kind of production out of him on special teams, if nothing else. You look at another fourth-round selection for the Baltimore Ravens. Pick 130, compensatory pick. Kyle Juszczyk, fullback out of Harvard. Now, Juszczyk, look, I'll tell you what, I like this pick a lot because in Baltimore, we know how important the fullback position is. You had McClain, you've got Leach now, Leach getting up there in age. It'd be nice to have a successor behind Vontae Leach learning how to play the fullback position. But I tell you what, Juszczyk isn't just your typical fullback, though. And you know how the Ravens always have these plotters, these big physical fullbacks that you stick in there that can block in the run game. Well, Juszczyk is a little bit different. He's a guy that can stonewall you in the run game. As Mike Mayock pointed out at the Senior Bowl, this guy stoned every single linebacker that he faced. In one-on-one drills, no one was able to get by him. So he did his job. He shows that he can take it to that next level. But at Harvard, Judzik was a tight end. So you're getting the best of both worlds here. A guy that can block, but you can sneak him out of the backfield into the flats. And this is a 4.7 40 guy. So it's not like he's slow. It's not like he's going to be out there, plodding away and barely moving. He's a guy that, if they're not careful, he'll get loose. And at Harvard, we're talking about a guy with over 50 catches for over 700 yards. So you're talking about a guy that was highly productive at college, very soft hands, can catch the football. So I really like what you're getting here in Kyle Judzik. And I tell you what, if this Ravens team and your offensive coordinator, Caldwell, can find a way to use this guy, implement him into the scheme somehow, I like this guy a lot because he gives you that H-back, that fullback, that tight end kind of feel. And he's versatile. You can put him at the H-back. You can put him at fullback. You can put him at tight end. However you feel the need to use this guy, he's versatile enough that you can put him there and feel like he can excel. So in the 4th round, pick 130, fullback out of Harvard, Kyle Judzik, for me, is a triple. I really like this guy and his versatility and everything that he brings to the table for the Baltimore Ravens. Can catch it, very soft hands, very athletic, runs a 4.7 40, so he can move, and then very strong and powerful at the point of attack as a fullback, can block. And so you can sneak him out into the route as a fullback, as an H-back, throw him the football and watch him work there, or you can hand the ball off to Ray Rice or to Bernard Pierce and watch this guy go hammer someone and deplete them at the fullback position. Like this pick a lot. Think the Ravens got more value here in the 4th round. So now we move on to the 5th round, pick 168, compensatory pick, offensive tackle out of Wisconsin, Ricky Wagner. And here's a 6'6 guy, about 310, solid selection out of Wisconsin. You see up here that he is an offensive tackle. I don't think he can really play on the left side in the National Football League. He was solid at Wisconsin, but I don't think in the National Football League he's going to play on the left side of the line. I think he's a guy that you put at right tackle, and he's a guy that you get for depth. I think he doesn't own the athleticism necessary to play on the left side. And on the right side, I think he's okay. He's adequate. I think, again, guys who have an explosive first step will give him problems. Guys who can knife into the backfield quickly, or if there's a blitz to his side where he's got to pinch inside and then get back outside, I don't know if he's skilled enough to do that. But he brings a lot of the intangibles you look for. Again, coming from Wisconsin, you know this guy is strong in the run game. Any Big Ten offensive lineman, count them in for being adept at run block. Well, here's another guy in Ricky Wagner that's exactly that. Can really help you in the run game, can block down, get to that second level, doesn't have a problem getting to that reach block. He's athletic enough to do that. So he can set that edge and really come outside and kind of make sure that that edge is sealed so that you can get outside and run the football. So he's very adept at doing that. He can get to that second level, be a menace down the field while blocking at that second and third level. So he brings some value in the run game. But again, when it comes to pass blocking, he's not the best at that. He can anchor, and when he does anchor, he's really good. But the problem is he's got to get back into his stance and get to the point where he can anchor. So he's got to win off the ball. And a lot of times he's not athletic enough to do that. So there's some questions about him as a pass blocker. But in the run game, this guy is more than sufficient for the Baltimore Ravens and that power run scheme that the Ravens like to employ. I think that Ricky Wagner, with a little bit of polishing, a little bit of work, can come in and be more than suffice at the right tackle position as a backup. I don't think he's the guy you want starting on your football team for more than 2 or 3 weeks at a time. But in a pinch, he can go to the left side. I don't really recommend that. But if you don't have any other options and any other alternatives, Ricky Wagner can help you in a pinch at the left side. But I tell you what, a right tackle with a little bit of work, this guy could be more than adequate as a rotational depth guy along your offensive line. in the 5th round, pick 168, offensive tackle out of Wisconsin. Ricky Wagner, for me, is a double. He needs some work, needs to be polished up as a right tackle in this league. But again, in the run game, this guy is a mauler and a masher, and that's what the Ravens do in the run game. They maul and mash you, and here's a guy that can help them do that in Ricky Wagner. So you look in the 6th round, pick 200, defensive end out of Notre Dame, Cameron Lewis Moore. And here's a guy that I liked a lot in college because I thought he did all the small things, all the dirty work on this Notre Dame defense. Could play, the 3 or the 5 technique. I think that he's a 5 technique in the National Football League. I think for what the Ravens drafted him for was absolutely perfect for what he can bring to the table because in the Ravens 3-4 front, he's going to play the 5 technique at defensive end, and I think that's exactly where he should be. I think that's where he's best suited in the National Football League, and I thought that's where he played his best at Notre Dame as well. Doesn't have a problem taking on double teams. Is quick enough to get in the backfield to disrupt running plays. Isn't going to get a heck of a lot of pressure on the quarterback. He's not as athletic as you would like from that standpoint in terms of getting to the quarterback. But in the run game, I think he's as solid as they come. He does everything well, doesn't do anything great. But for a defensive line that really lacked that that toughness that you're used to seeing from the Ravens, here's a guy that's going to inject that immediately if inserted into any kind of Ravens defensive rotation up front. I think that this is a guy that helps you immediately. Has some injury issues towards ACL in a national championship game against Alabama. I think he would have been drafted higher if not for that ACL injury because I thought he played really well, had an outstanding career at Notre Dame. And so I thought he would have been somewhere that 4th or 5th round, maybe even in the 3rd round for someone. He tears the ACL in that national championship game, drops down to a 6th round selection. Ravens are the benefactors of that. And so I think they got themselves a really good player here in Cameron Lewis Moore. He just has to stay healthy. And if he can, at 6'4", 6'5", 298, so we're talking about essentially 300 pounds, you're getting a guy that is going to be stout at the point of attack. It's going to help you in the run game immensely. And every now and again, when you're not looking, he'll get pressure on the quarterback. And so with that kind of frame, he's a guy that keeps his eyes on the quarterback as well, can get his hands up, back passes down and into the air. And so I think you get a lot of value here in the 6th round for a guy that probably would have been drafted a lot higher if not for the ACL tear. If he can stay healthy, I think Cameron Lewis Moore is going to be a really good addition to the Baltimore Ravens defense. Don't look for pass rush from this guy. But with a Ravens defense that struggled in stopping the run throughout the 2012 regular season, here's a guy that's going to help you in that department immediately. Love the selection. 6th round, 200th overall selection, defensive end out of Notre Dame. Cameron Lewis Moore for me is a solid double. Borderline triple. Thought that had he not tore that ACL, I probably could have upgraded this one to a triple, especially for where you got him. But because of the ACL injury, you were able to get him where you got him. But now you have to worry about this guy who already lacked explosiveness coming into this draft, who now just tore his ACL. Will he be the same player or will he be a shell of himself coming into the National Football League? That remains to be seen. We'll see how that goes. But right now, it's a triple for me in the 6th round. You look at what the Ravens have done in this draft in terms of needs. When you look at the offensive line, Ricky Wagner takes care of one of those needs. And so Ravens doing some work right now in this draft. You look at another 6th round selection, 203rd pick. It's a compensatory pick. Offensive tackle out of Colorado State, Pueblo Ryan Jensen. Look, simply put, I have him down as an offensive tackle. He's not playing tackle in the National Football League. He is a guard, simply put. At 6'3", about 310, he can't play tackle at 6'3". It's just not happening. In the National Football League, most times tackles are 6'5", 6'6", out there on the edges. You might see a 6'4" tackle every now and again, but 6'3", it's highly unlikely that you'll see a guy on the edges at 6'3". Here's a guy that is very strong, very athletic, played at a very, very, very small school. And so I have questions about that. You know how I feel. Dominate. Well, he was okay. He wasn't dominant, but he was okay, which is fine. But now he needs this to translate to the National Football League. He has to step his game up another level. And I think his quickness, his athleticism, and his strength, and this is a guy that is very nasty. You know how I feel about nasty offensive linemen. Love them. Can't get enough of them. So here's another guy that comes in very nasty, has a streak at the guard position. Again, the Ravens love to employ that power run game. Here's a guy that can help you, that's nasty, that wants to get a guy down, that wants to pancake him, pour a little bit of syrup on top, get to the next level, do some more damage. Those are the kind of guys the Ravens like to put on their offensive line. That's why Ryan Jensen is a draft pick of the Baltimore Ravens. He possesses that nasty streak, that nastiness that you need in the trenches in the National Football League. And so, if for no other reason than that, plus the quickness and the athleticism that he possesses, Ryan Jensen is a solid pick in the 6th round at 203 out of Colorado State, Pueblo. He's not going to play offensive tackle, I don't think. I think he's more of a guard in the National Football League. Either way, he's a double at the guard position for the Baltimore Ravens. So we wrap this draft up with the Ravens in the 7th round. They have 2 selections. And here is probably one of the most intriguing picks of this draft for the Ravens. I am really intrigued by this guy. I will be keeping a watchful eye on this guy to see, A, if he makes the roster, and B, what his impact or contribution to this team will be in 2013 and moving forward. But I really think the Ravens could be onto something here. In the 7th round, 238th overall selection, wide receiver out of Elon, Aaron Millette. Now, Millette, I tell you what, played at Elon. Elon? Who's Elon? Don't worry about all of that. Okay? Small school, we know that. Does not matter. You know how I feel. 6'2", 215, catches everything. All right? And what I mean by catches everything? Junior year, 2011. 113 catches. Over 1,600 yards. Yeah. Opens your eyes a little bit, huh? Okay. Senior season. 93 grabs. 1,400 yards. If that doesn't wake you up, smell the Folgers. If that doesn't wake you up, I don't know what will. Okay? You know my stance on small school players. Dominate the competition. I don't care what division, what school, what conference, dominate the competition. So what, you play in Division 3? Dominate. So what, you play in Division 2? Dominate. So what, you play at Elon? Dominate. Well, he did. And so Millette, for me, is a guy that I want to watch. Again, at 6'2", 215, with those kind of numbers, that kind of production at college. That's something I want to look at. Now, again, competition wasn't great. We know that. Don't care. Now I want to see, does this translate to the National Football League? Okay. Also, not very strong. At 215, I expect this guy to be able to bench press 2 1/4, 12, 15 times maybe. I got 9. Not really enamored with it. But, of course, he'll get stronger in the National Football League. He's a 4.5 40 guy. I want to see if this guy can come in because I feel like there's room for advancement at the receiver position with the Baltimore Ravens. Who's in front of this guy to stop him from not only making a roster, but ascending and getting some meaningful snaps in 2013? Who is it, Tandon Doss? Who's in front of this guy to stop him from assuming a very integral part in this Ravens offense at the receiver position? I don't know of many options that the Ravens have to stop this guy from getting on the field and playing some meaningful snaps. Of course, you've got Jacoby Jones. You've got Torrey Smith. But after that, who are guys that I know are going to be standing in this guy's way from making this roster and having an impact on the Ravens in 2013? Tommy Streeter? Tandon Doss? I like this guy a lot. And so, if nothing else, he has a shot. He's got his foot in the door. He's got it wedged in between the door. It's wedged in there. So the door's open. Now it's his job to pry it open and go in. The opportunity is there. It's knocking. He's got to open that door and allow himself to walk in. He's got all the measurables. He's got the production. Now he has to go out and show the Ravens that, hey, I don't care that I played at a small school. You didn't care. That's why you drafted me. Now let me show you what I can do. He needs to show that he can get it done at the next level. Is he a top-end speed guy? No. He's not going to blow by any defenders. But what he will do is use that big frame to get in front of people, position himself to catch the slant routes, to catch the dig routes, to catch the post, to go up and make plays on the football. And if they're not careful, if he gets enough space, he can catch it, and then he can separate after the catch. He can use that big frame to maybe bounce off of some guys and be strong with the football. No more Anquan Boldin means everyone has an opportunity to make an impact on this Ravens roster at the receiver position. The Ravens are really rolling the dice with no Anquan Boldin. They're saying, hey, we have more than enough stuff on this roster to get by. Tommy Streeter had a red shirt last year, so let's see what the Ravens are going to do at the receiver position. I think Aaron Mellett will add a little bit of competition to that mix, and I think I'll be keeping an eye on this guy because I like what he brings to the table. In the 7th round, 238th overall selection, wide receiver out of Elon, Aaron Mellett is a double. Want to see what he can do. A, will he make the roster? B, if he does, in what capacity will he be used on this Ravens roster? And C, can he get stronger and get a meaningful role on this Ravens team right away? I'll be intrigued to see if this guy makes it, and if he does, how do the Ravens use him? So you go to the 7th round, finish up the draft, 247th overall selection, compensatory pick, cornerback out of California, Mark Anthony. So you go to a big school, get a Pac-12 guy in Mark Anthony, solid corner at 5'11", a $195, pushing 200 pounds, solid guy, is a little bit long in terms of 5'11" normally isn't as long as he is. Long arms, long legs. Not as fluid as you would like from a guy his size. But again, when you're that long, things get a little choppy. It's not as fluid and smooth a lot of times. And so he fits into that category. His back pedal isn't the cleanest. His hips aren't the fluidest. So the fluidity and the smoothness that you would like out of the cornerback position isn't all there with Mark Anthony. A very solid tackler, though, will come up, stick his nose in the run game, help you in that capacity. Long enough to run with receivers down the sideline, out wide. He's a 4'6", 40 guy, so not extremely fast. I think that's going to be his downfall in the National Football League if he doesn't make it out wide as a corner, is the speed, the lack of the top-end speed. Maybe he's a guy that you put in zone coverage and he's lethal, but the college numbers don't reflect that. He wasn't a high turnover guy, didn't force a lot of interceptions. Did get his hands on 12 passes, though, knocked those away. So from that standpoint, hey, a knockdown is just as good as an interception on 3rd down because that team has to punt the football. So if he's getting his hands on the football, that means he's getting the other team off the field. So look, if they're not catching it, all is good. And so maybe this guy has a niche in his league. I just haven't identified it yet. And I don't know if the Ravens know exactly what it is either. But they drafted him, which must mean they have some sort of plan for him. So we'll see what the Ravens have in store for this guy. But right now, for me, it's a double. And I think he's a solid defender, but I think there's a lot of question marks there. And I'd be surprised if he even made the roster because of him not standing out at one thing. Not big as a corner. He is long, but he's still 5'11", so it's still a height deficiency there. He's a solid size corner. Again, 5'11" is the average height for a corner, but in this day and age in the National Football League, we're seeing more and more 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" receivers. And so it's always nice to have a guy out there that's 6'1", 6'2" at the cornerback position that can run. And oh, by the way, this guy isn't a burner either. If you're going to be an average size corner, then I at least need you to be fast. If you're not bringing height to the table, he's not bringing either. He's not extremely fast, nor quick, nor is he extremely tall. And so I think Mark Anthony will be a long shot to make this roster. And the quarterback out of Cal is a double, played at a nice school, and I think he can be okay. He'll help you on special teams. If you find the right capacity for this guy, maybe it's zone coverage in the nickel or dime package, he might be a viable corner for you. So we'll see if the Ravens have something in store for this guy. But right now, for me, it's a double in the 7th round. So you look at the draft, and we finish up this board. Ryan Jensen, offensive lineman, meets the need at the offensive tackle. Aaron Mallett is a receiver that meets the need there. Ravens clean up their needs board. You look at the draft, and I think the Ravens did a wonderful job of having their scouts out there in different areas. You see a lot of small school guys over here. Missouri Southern State, Harvard, even though they are Harvard, it's still not a football factory. You look at Colorado State, Pueblo, and Elon, a lot of schools that aren't household names yet. They're plucking out players that were standouts at these schools. So once again, the Ravens going outside of the box to get talent. Let's see if it really manifests itself to anything in the National Football League. But you look at Elam, home run, Brown, Williams, both triples, Simon a double, Judzik a triple, Wagner a double, Lewis Moore, Jensen, Mallett, and Anthony all doubles. It all averages up to a double for the Baltimore Ravens. I think they had a marvelous draft, complementing some of the pieces that they were able to put together in the offseason, getting a guy like Canty. Again, we already talked about getting a guy like Elvis Dumerville and getting someone out in the secondary that can really help you, like a Michael Huff. And so slowly putting the pieces of that puzzle back together. It's not going to be the same as it was last year, and you don't expect it to be. But if the Ravens can just find a way to weather the storm of losing so many players that were integral parts of them winning the Super Bowl a season ago, and this draft is going to help them do that somewhat, so did off-season free agency, the Ravens could find themselves back in a position to strike once again in 2013, something that 3 months ago I did not think was a reality for this football team. Once again, Ozzie Newsome and Ozzie the Ravens trust at it again, doing some damage in the draft and in free agency. I think the Ravens find themselves in really good position to, at minimum, get to the postseason. And once you get there, you've got a shot if you're the Ravens, because 3 months ago, it didn't even look like this Ravens football team would have good enough players to even field a team. Were they going to have enough? Were they going to have any players to even compete in the AFC North Division? All of a sudden now, they seem like, hey, business as usual out in Baltimore. This draft is a big part of the reason why I'm starting to feel like the Ravens are right where they need to be in 2013. It's a solid double for the Baltimore Ravens. Your Super Bowl defending champion, Baltimore Ravens, in the 2013 NFL Draft wrap-up.
Draft Zone.